Hello and welcome to Sky National News for this Tuesday the 22nd of November. These are the top stories. Qantas and the unions assure passengers their travel plans won't be disrupted over the holiday period. A man who killed a woman while on parole has been sentenced to 35 years jail. Thousands of New South Wales police protest in the centre of Sydney. And a day of engagements in Canberra for the Danish royal couple. In sport, successful former South African coach Mickey Arthur named the new Australian cricket coach. And the weather, rain and storms in the east, dry and hot in the west.
This is National News.
First tonight, the Danish royals have wrapped up their day in Canberra by visiting the Australian War Memorial. Mary and Frederick also met the Governor-General before joining the Prime Minister for a luncheon at the Great Hall in Parliament House. Sky News political reporter Laura Jays is there and joins us now. Laura, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Michael. Hundreds of people here in Canberra braved the dreary weather to get a glimpse of the Prince and the Princess.
The bitter dispute between Qantas and its unions will be forced to arbitration, but passengers have been told they won't be left stranded this Christmas. The Federal Transport Minister remains hopeful the parties can find common ground.
Qantas and its unions can't agree on much, but one thing looking a little more certain, there won't be strike action before Christmas. On just about every other point, it's deadlock. Sydney.
The man who killed a Victorian mother while on parole has been sentenced to 35 years jail. Joanne Kate Wicking's family was in court to see 42-year-old Sean Marafko sentenced. He stabbed the mother to death in her Kilmore home before bashing and setting fire to her young. Thousands of uniformed police officers in Sydney have held a rally to protest changes to compensation payments. The Police Association says the changes to the death and disability scheme would slash compensation payments for injured officers. Joining me now from our Sydney studio is President of the New South Wales Police Association, Scott Webber. Scott Webber, thanks for your time. Now, just what impact would these proposed changes to the death and disability scheme have on the New South Wales Police Force?
What we saw this afternoon was 5,000 police officers in uniform and their families marching on Parliament House. What these slashes in the death and disability protections will do will mean police officers will be pauper. The biggest problem here is that a police officer with a partial permanent injury who leaves the New South Wales Police from no fault of their own is actually medically exited by the Commissioner of Police and cannot find another job or any other form of employment, not through their own causes, but actually just cannot get another job, will receive zero payments. This is actually a massive slash to all police officers' protections, and it's a major concern for all police, and that's why we marched today.
At this stage, what industrial action are you threatening?
At the present moment, we marched on Parliament House today, and that was 5,000 police officers in uniform. They endorsed to put a vote to all members across New South Wales Police in taking further action, and that further action is industrial action. That means that we will only attend life-threatening jobs or urgent jobs. This is a massive move for New South Wales Police and something that's unprecedented.
So does that mean you won't go to call out such as shoplifting or break-and-enters, minor thefts, that type of thing?
We'll only go to major events, that is, incidents or jobs that are life-threatening or of an urgent nature. If there's an offender there, yes, we will attend, but what we won't be attending to is minor reports in regards to insurance purposes or just for reporting mechanisms.
OK, and what's your time frame on that?
We'll be putting a vote out to the members in the next couple of weeks, so we'll be obviously building up to that, and it's a big step for New South Wales Police.
All right. We will have to leave it there. Scott Webber from the Police Association, we thank you for your time.
No dramas, thank you.
The government's mining tax looks set to pass through the lower house of Parliament later tonight. It follows last-minute negotiations with the Greens to secure their support. Joining me now from Canberra, Sky News political editor David Spears. Well, David, is this now a done deal?
All but, Mike. The government's very confident that this will go through. The outstanding issue was one of the concessions the government had to make to get independent Andrew Wilkie over the line. They were lifting the point at which the tax kicks in. It's going to cost the whole package about $100 million over 5 years, which in an $11 billion tax isn't a lot, but the Greens were worried about this. They don't want to lose a cent from the revenue this mining tax is going to generate, and they'd been demanding the government come up with this money from somewhere else in the mining sector. We spoke to Finance Minister Penny Wong a short time ago.
Egypt's interim cabinet has tendered its resignation as tens of thousands of people protest in Cairo's Tahrir Square. The death toll from violence over the past 3 days has now reached 33. The number of demonstrators has swelled in the square, the focal point of the revolt that toppled President Hosni Mubarak in February. In just 4 days' time, New Zealanders will go to the polls. Today, Prime Minister John Key campaigned in the key battleground of Christchurch, while opposition leader Phil Goff was in Wellington. Sky News reporter Kim Baker-Wilson is on the campaign trail and filed this report.
Well, Phil Goff is certainly in positive territory today, and it's because of this, the reaction he enjoyed in last night's leaders' debate with John Key, which for the first time featured the so-called worm, and that is where a computer graph is overlaid on screen on whoever's speaking in either positive or negative territory, depending on the reaction of a studio audience. And what we found last night was that the worm really did love Phil Goff and really didn't like John Key at all. Today, Phil Goff has been in Wellington at a state-owned wind turbine. He's starting a whirlwind tour of the country here in Wellington to campaign against National's plan to sell assets. Asset sales, of course, are a key part of National's campaign. It will sell or partially sell state assets if it makes it back in the Parliament. Labor doesn't want to see that happen. There are many things that Labor could be campaigning on. It wants to raise the minimum wage, it wants to raise the retirement age, and it also wants to stop the flow of people heading to Australia. But Labor is seemingly casting all those policies aside and focusing here in the last week of the campaign solely on stopping National from selling those state assets. But the trouble for Labor is that it hasn't been doing too well in the polls, despite it doing well last night in that worm debate. So Phil Goff, in these last few days of the campaign, has to convince voters that he should be Prime Minister, that Labor should be leading the next government, and today Phil Goff says there's every chance that can happen. Kim Baker-Wilson, Sky News, Wellington.
Stay with us on Sky National News. Top stories after the break. Also coming up, sport, and Collingwood fly out for their biannual altitude training in Arizona.
This is Sky News.
Top stories on Sky National News. Passengers have been assured by Qantas and the unions that their travel plans won't be disrupted over the holiday period. All parties have been forced to attend a Fair Work Australia arbitration to resolve their dispute after failing to reach a deal. A man who stabbed a Victorian mother to death while he was on parole has been sentenced to 35 years jail. The man also bashed and set fire to her young children. Thousands of New South Wales police officers have marched through Sydney CBD protesting against government changes to their death and disability scheme. And the weather tomorrow: rain and storms in the east, dry and hot in the west. Time for a check of the day's finance information. Stephen Dagland from ComSec joins me. Now, Stephen, another tough day on the local market. And time for sport now with Yvonne Sampson. Yvonne, we've got a Kiwi coaching our rugby team, now South African coaching our cricket team.
Yeah, we do. Our domestic candidates were brushed aside. Mike, Cricket Australia's hunt for a new head coach is over. South African Mickey Arthur has been named in the top job that comes with the added responsibility of acting as a selector.
He's the man who turned around South Africa's performance, and now Cricket Australia is hoping he can work his magic with the Aussies.
That's all for sport and plenty more to come, Mike.
OK, Yvonne, thank you. Quick look at the weather now. Rain and storms in the east tomorrow, dry and hot in the west. And the news continues in just a moment, including the government's mining tax set to pass through the lower house of Parliament later tonight.
Gold Coast.
All of us can make a difference through the life that we live.
I would like to meet as many of you as I can.
It is very chilly here in Rome.
Air Force One, we just saw it land.
It's an honour to be here.
We are getting minute by minute updates.
strengthen the great alliance.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
This is Sky News, Australia's news channel.
It is 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Welcome to Sky National News. These are tonight's top stories. Passengers assured there will be no Qantas strike action over the Christmas period, but the bitter dispute with unions continues. A man who fatally stabbed a Victorian woman and tortured two of her young daughters has been jailed for 35 years. Thousands of New South Wales police officers protest proposed compensation changes. And a day of engagements in Canberra for the Danish royal couple. In sport, Mickey Arthur becomes the first foreigner to coach the Australian cricket team. And the weather, rain and storms in the north and the east, clearing in the south and hot in the west.
This is National News.
The bitter dispute between Qantas and its unions will be forced to arbitration, but passengers have been told they won't be left stranded this Christmas. The Federal Transport Minister remains hopeful the parties can find common ground.